I'm Komal Devjani, CEO at Revya AI.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so give me a cloud level overview, like flyover of Revya AI and what it is you guys do.
So Revya is essentially a back office finance function for CPG brands where we do things like automated deduction recovery, trade spend planning, and a little bit of light bookkeeping.
Perfect. Well, I can tell you that in my experience, it sounds like we're about to get into some of the stuff that what might be something that might be overwhelming to a lot of founders and senior leaders, but it is something that is necessary. And it is such a necessary thing because if you're tracking all those things, a lot of these founders and startups, they don't track it well enough. And so they don't
Exactly.
realize the inefficiencies that exist. So I want to lead in with everybody saying if you're running a business right now and you're not tracking and you're not doing what we're about to talk about, you're leaving money on the table, and you're really not as efficient as you should be. So compliments to what you guys are doing. And are you kind of, when did you get involved in this, and kind of let's go through your personal a little bit.
So before I started Revya, I was at Boston Consulting Group, part of an incubator, and I was working with brands like L'Oreal and Clorox. And I actually saw that they were walking away from like millions of dollars in deductions. And I realized that a lot of these, in conversation with like the finance team, it came out that a lot of these are potentially recoverable. And most of the times they don't have the bandwidth to necessarily check line by line every single detail. And so a year ago, basically, I was like, you know what, let's full send on this problem and support not just these L'Oreal and Cloroxes of the world, but also emerging and mid-market brands that might not have the same infrastructure that L'Oreal and Clorox has to identify invalids.
Talk about what it is you're talking about when you mean deductions for anybody that's listening here. That way we can give a little bit of, I know what it is, but I want the world or the audience to kind of understand that part. Yeah.
Yeah. So deductions is basically a chargeback that a distributor sends to you or a retailer sends to you for either having a shortage in how much product you send them, or you sent it late, or you actually agreed on some trade spend and they'll send you some deduction bill backs or some like charges around that. And most of the time, those deductions, they can be likely recoverable. So if you're not checking against the contracts that you have signed on with the distributors, and if you're not checking against the original trade spend agreements, there might be some deductions that you're charged and are paying for that are potentially recoverable, but they're just being taken off your check when you're getting your check back from your distributors.
And with the clients I work with, it can be, if you're not watching it ahead of time, it can be a shock sometimes, especially if you're doing well and you have a lot of chargebacks. Or if you do, a lot of times people get excited when they launch a new market because they're like, we're selling so much, but they forgot about that co-op trade spend, and they get that invoice and then they get all scared and everything like that. So like, talk about how kind of maybe like giving some examples of different things that are different scenarios or categories where this kind of would come up in specific.
Yeah, so I think most of the shortage chargebacks, that a lot of the ones that we've recovered at Revya are shortages. And so most founders are like, okay, I don't necessarily have the team, the resources, or the energy to go in line by line looking at every single deduction, right? And that's where a lot of their recoverable margin is. So you might be thinking, okay, I sold for $100,000. That's what my check is supposed to be, but I only got back 60 or 70. And of the $30,000 that was gone, most founders don't necessarily, especially like the smaller teams, don't necessarily have the infrastructure to go in and necessarily build out a team to go and check everything out, or sometimes not even like the time themselves to go and check everything out. And the worst thing I think a founder in the CPG space can do is just not even open their remittances and see like what's going on, right? Like, and unfortunately, that is the reality, right? And we're working with the time that we have, and I can see the perspective of, I just want to grow my business. I just want to focus on growing revenue, but also there is this really big part of margin which can potentially help you with your next production run, and a big reason why deduction recovery is so important in CPG.
I saw it a lot when I was working with craft breweries from 2010 to 2017. They had such a surge in trending and their volume, and they were launching markets without a lot of effort. And a lot of them did. I'm not going to disparage all of them, but there was a lot that you could, if you had a good package and a decent product, you flew. This is where a lot of them started falling apart in the years into their launches, was this. And so like, you guys, you work with large distributors and small ones. And a lot of times too, when this isn't planned for ahead of time, it damages the relationship between the supplier and the distributor. So outside of just the monetary value that you're reconciling, deducting, and then recovering from, I want everybody to understand how important it is. It's more than just the budget line, and it's more than just the net profit. It's about your relationship, because even if you don't have a problem with your distributor, if you weren't paying attention, our natural human instinct is, if you didn't know that chargeback was coming, or you didn't know that deduction was coming, you all of a sudden get this resentful feeling towards your distributor. And I speak from my experience being the bridge between those two scenarios. I guess not bridge, sometimes it was more like a referee. And in those scenarios, the core problem was this: 90% of the time that it wasn't mismanagement nefariously, but it was just a disorganized reconciliation process of their finances. So kind of what are kind of the scale of businesses that you currently work with? I mean, I assume you have a lot of startups and stuff like that, but you probably have some larger ones as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we work with brands that are in a pretty wide range of how far along they are. So we work with like Wilcox Farms. This is obviously like over $100 million brand. We work with like, mid-market brands that are like at 15 million, 25 million, 30 million, things like that. So the one thing I've noticed though is the brands that bring us along later in the later stage, I've seen that, systems that they've implemented ages ago that might not have been like designed to scale, actually scale problems as opposed to necessarily
Yes.
solutions. And and that's a tricky place to be in, because it might not just be that you're not looking at your books, but it's also recognizing the process that you have in place that's leading to so many chargebacks. And it's kind of like, I feel like I heard this somewhere, where if you're not checking your bank account every day, it's not growing, kind of a thing. Or if you're not looking at your numbers every day, there's something wrong. And so it's really important to keep track of your numbers, because that actually shows you beyond what your profit loss statement is, but it shows you where your process needs improvement, right? And so I've seen that some brands have literally had to like change their process around, because now they're suddenly paying attention to what their deductions are, and how they can actually improve it. Even for the valid ones where it's like rightfully deducted, there is a process change that could be implemented, like labeling differently, or showing up to the DC earlier, or having a conversation with your category manager earlier. So just getting ahead of that allows you to like preemptively reduce deductions as well.
Now, I'm curious for you, like you're in the entire CPG space as a whole. So I'm just in beverage, and then I'm in every category within beverage. And as a service provider, when you don't niche in too deeply, we get to really see the forest from the trees as far as the industry goes and stuff like that. So like which parts within the CPG world do you think have the toughest in here? I know for alcohol in my world, we don't have pay to play or anything like that. It's all illegal. So we really, the minimal amount of deductions and billbacks and stuff like that. Are there other industries within CPG where that world is full of a lot of layers and of the onion?
Yeah, I think there's greater complexity with just managing DSD chargebacks in the
Mhm.
beverage space. I would actually argue that beverage is a little bit trickier than other
Oh,
ones I've
okay.
seen, just because there's more trade spend going on, right? There's always these like BOGO deals or 2 for 5 situations. So there's a lot more trade spend. Um, there's a lot more complexity in how you're delivering goods. So like if it's via DSD distributor versus like a KeHE or a Unify, non-alcoholics are like in this unique position where they can go through the DSDs, they can go
Hmm.
through the beer, wine, alcohol distributors, but they don't necessarily have to follow the same rules as a beer and wine producer. So it's a challenging place to be in, because you're kind of like, how do I navigate these type of deductions that are intended for like a beer and wine supplier versus us, where we're non-alcoholic. And then I think DSD in general, like more complexity from like a paperwork standpoint, like the way in which DSDs like distribute their invoices is a little bit more complex, just in terms of like coding, and like if you're looking into like getting everything organized into your ERP. I know some brands that are like have teams manually coding what their GL code on NetSuite should be for the DSD invoices. But like with Revia, it's just one click, you upload, and everything is passed through. So it's less of a so that was actually one of the first problems we solved. We're like, this is terrible. Like, why does someone have to manually go in and like find the GL code and like write out what are all of the pieces of itemized list of things that we got charged back for? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a long answer to say they're all really complex, but the areas where there's more trade spend, or if you're running a lot of trade spend, you can see a lot more billbacks.
What were kind of the first clients whenever you guys got started? Like what were the brands that were like early adopters to the concept of what you were trying to service the market with?
Yeah, so we piloted with 3 brands. It was True. It's like True and you can check them out as Drink True, Obvi, and Just Iced Tea.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, that's really
Yeah.
wild. So full circle, one of my first guests on here was the founder of Just Ice Tea.
Oh, Seth, really?
Yeah, Seth Goldman was one of my first guests on the show. It used to be
Yes.
called Free Mind Podcast about 4 years ago. Yeah,
Wow, that is actually full circle. That's amazing.
that's super cool. That's so
That's
cool.
super cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I
And also,
actually,
I love how this is a small world, and you only realize when you're on a podcast, and you're like, oh, I know
yes,
someone who's on.
yeah, yeah. I've been doing this. I guess coming up on 4.5 years or so now, and I just like surpassed 300 guests, and this is. It's not often that it's happened, but it's so exciting when it does happen. When I'm like, somebody's like, "Oh, I worked with this person." I was like, "Oh, they were in the beginning." It's always the first season. It's always the first
Yeah.
year. Is like I had some good ones on there, and I have some great ones now, and I love this. I love tying everything together. So when you were working, I mean that. So just Ice Tea right off the bat, and those other ones. Those are some big brands. I mean, what did you know them prior? Walk me through. I'm going to nerd out on the business development side of how you kind of lined up pilot programs that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of them. So when we were testing the idea, right, we went to like Expo, we went to a lot of these like conferences, just getting to know people. And it was all founder-led sales. And like I would say we're still doing a lot of founder-led sales. And um the first couple, it was just through Expo, I believe. And Just Iced Tea I met through another friend of mine who I met also at a conference who made a recommendation that they should work with us.
That's a note to anybody in the audience that doesn't attend conferences. I've been to 3 or 4, or actually 5 already this year. Is that conferences are the best way to grow your business.
The best way to grow your business. I know people talk a lot, like I don't know about you, but like in my space, everyone's talking about CAC, right? Like what's
Mhm.
your cost of customer acquisition? And I always put conference as like the cost for customer acquisition because I think that's one of the most under like slept on channel to meet people and not just like get customers, but also get feedback for what you're building and validate what you're building. So I know a lot of people love to be like behind their screens, and it's like I just want to be like a LinkedIn warrior, and I think that's amazing. It takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that, but there's nothing like going out there and making eye contact with someone that you think might value your service, that's who you're solving a problem for, right?
Yeah, and honestly too, I'll also say that at least in the adult beverage space, the quality conversations have changed in the past year. It's surpassed everything I could have imagined from the quality of conversations, also from strangers. Like in the pre-COVID and a little bit after COVID, we were still very transactional. Like it was very the conversations were very like, what are they going to do for me? What am I going to do for you? But I feel like this year especially, it's everybody slowed down a little bit, and it's more like getting to know each other and starting to build relationships now, and that's where like I thrive. So it's really a place that I can say that I've enjoyed conferences in the last year more than I ever have.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that people are more open to having connection now than they were before?
Do you want the heavy spiritual answer, or do you want the professional answer?
No, I want the real answer.
Yeah. The real answer is I really believe that the weight of the world right now is forcing people to realize how much everybody else is going through. And I think that we're past the wearing the mask and being like, this is business Nate. And then I come home and this is dad Nate. And this is boyfriend. This is whatever. It's now, I feel like people are fully coming, and me included in the past couple of years, fully coming into it doesn't matter the room. It doesn't matter the state. It doesn't matter the vehicle. I am me. And I feel like there's a lot less superficial conversations that are going on. I feel like people are getting very deep really quickly. Now, I could hear somebody tell me it's exact opposite, and it could be that I'm putting that out there, therefore I'm receiving that, which I accept. I also am on a show every week on 2 different shows where I'm very vulnerable. So when people come up to me and they know the shows or anything like that, they open up faster with me. So I could have a I understand that I could have a tunnel vision view. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that. Like, it might be the case that you're putting it out into the world, and so you're receiving it. But also, like, I think that we underestimate how much we like influence the world as well, as individuals, right? Like, I think a lot of people, when I was younger, I used to think I have no power over the world. But the
Mhm.
older I get, the more I realize that I actually do have an influence, and the way I exist in the world, the way you exist in the world, really does have an influence on the people around us. And if we show up as authentically ourselves, I think will inspire others to be more authentically themselves as well.
It's a big piece of my life. It's I spent a lot of years in my earlier career being young and running through and dealt with substance abuse issues and stuff like that, and that put a big mask on my life. And in the past few years, getting sober and going through all that stuff, it's really changed my lens, and it's kind of become a core piece of just how I carry my everyday life. And my goal in life is not to force it on anybody of what I did, but if somebody sees something that I'm doing and they're like, "That's really cool," and it ends up tweaking something and changing something about their life, that's the goal in my day. You know what I mean? That makes
That's
it for me.
cool. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like we have a ripple effect in the world around us and the people we talk to, and the more radically honest and authentically ourselves we can be around them, the more we're like inspiring and teaching others to be themselves to us. I actually like that's actually really hitting home right now because I've been struggling with. Can I be personal also and on this?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've been struggling with someone who I find has not been completely honest with me. And I I was so frustrated about it. And now I remember I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna show up and like tell this person everything that I might not have been honest about. Just like preemptively,
Mhm.
like be like, hey, by the way, like you deserve to know the truth. I care a lot about you. Let me tell you how I feel about this. And and it was so beautiful because he came back and he started like telling me everything and I was like, "Oh, that's what it takes." Like you just have to kind of be an example of like I believe you can do this because look, I can do this.
I think
You know, even
sometimes, yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a powerful. It feels like a micro leadership moment, but it's actually bigger. And it's taking that first step and taking that vulnerability and like taking it and just being like, this is me. And I use this metaphor a lot. Is when I started my sobriety journey, it was put all the skeletons on the clothesline in the backyard. And if somebody comes to the door and knocks and the door's always open. So if they've already walked through the yard and they've walked through the skeletons that I've exposed for them and they still want to sit on the porch with me, then that's a good person. And that's
yeah,
kind of the way I
good
built my
friends.
life. Yeah, I don't put walls up, but you got to navigate through a few skeletons to get through. But it's actually to where people can understand me because if you don't understand me, I'm a very polarizing person. And I know that about myself because I can be very intense in two directions. And sometimes because of my stature as well, being 6'3", 250 pounds and having tattoos and everything like that, people misunderstand me if you read me on the surface.
Right. Right.
So it's
How do
it's
you
one of those
feel
things. Yeah.
how do you feel about how do you feel about going through your sobriety journey while, working in the alcohol space? Like
It's
how do you think about that?
so I'll be open with you, is the first year I left. So I had the first year I knew I could not continue to go to bars and restaurants all day long to sell. I do market development and strategy work. So I'm in bars and restaurants and breweries and wineries all the time. And then I also do the podcast with them as well. And I started the podcast right at the beginning of the journey. So actually it's really incredible and it gets me emotional in a good way. When I go back to my YouTube channel, I'm not one of those people that scrubs places of embarrassment. So like you can go, my YouTube channel is all the way to the beginning of Free Mind, which is 2008. And it goes all the way to whenever YouTube started. So you can see videos when I started this business where I was using like one of those white flip cams in the back of a bar and I used to record bands while they were playing and then I book bands and stuff like that. So everything is one YouTube. I didn't curate like a new one for the podcast. And I did it intentionally because the theme of this is reflections of a founder. And it's like from myself, how I meet other founders, other leaders, other leadership in different areas, and also staff from other places. We have staff on here as well. But I want everybody to know that it's not a media company that is built to sell sponsorships. It's a media company to bring to light reflections because reflections are the importance of growth. If we don't
Right.
reflect, we don't grow. It's like when I've been divorced and sometimes people go on my Facebook page and they'll be like, why don't you delete all those old wedding photos? Like you're in a relationship now with somebody else. And it was the first part of our relationship conversation was, I'm not going to delete my history because
Right.
those things, while they didn't work out, they're life's lessons and they're life's tuition. And they're who made me today to a place where I can receive love and I can give love. But I had to go through all that to get here. And to
Right.
hide away from that would be the complete hypocrisy of anything in life to be like, oh, I got here on my own. Like people, like other men I know in today that are like, I'm a self-made man. Well, bullshit. Like a whole community like helped you, whether it was your mom, your uncle, your teacher in fifth grade. Someone planted some seed that pivoted that. And it's not that you were manipulated. It's that, when you people say that type of self-made man or whatever, it's built on lies. And it's
Right.
like, we have to be more humble about where we are, and we have to be more humble about how we got here, because life is built as a village more than it's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also the other thing about deleting things that have happened in your life is kind of like deleting it doesn't change what actually happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Deleting like it doesn't change what the reality is. And I find it really funny too when like sometimes on Reddit I'll see like a post of like, oh, my partner's upset with me because I won't delete my ex's photos or whatever
Yeah.
from my phone. And it's like what are you upset about? The fact that it happened or the fact that they're on the phone? Because that doesn't change what actually happened.
No, and that's where it wasn't not even a point of contention when I like explain myself, because every time I explain it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. And then I think
Right.
it's like sometimes when people have a problem with it, I think it's more of a projection because they've done that. And it's
Right.
because once you do that, you can't go backwards. Like that is and I know that sounds stupid to talk about social media like that, but it's also representative of your life. Like if you want to wipe those things from the public view to eventually hope, because I come from a PR background, that's what my degree's in. So, manipulate the public. If you want to make, eventually you think over time, people will forget that happened. But if you want to forget it happened, then you learn nothing. And then your whole purpose of being on this earth is to learn.
Exactly. I feel the same way. I actually think that if I'm not growing, I'm slowly dying. Like if I'm not learning, I'm dying. And I actually think that a big reason why I like even went into entrepreneurship and like wanted to like explore other ways I can just do career outside of like Boston Consulting Group, right? I've had a pretty good career, right? Like I was in computer vision, I was in edge computing, I had a pretty technical background and then went into BCG. I could have stayed there, but a- after a while you're just kind of like I want the next challenge. I want to learn and I want to see what's like if I have it, if I can do it. But also it's kind of like I think there's a puzzle to be solved out here and I feel like I can solve it. I feel like there's a puzzle to be solved and it's interesting to be able to solve it. It solves problems to be able to solve it and helps people to be able to solve it.
I firmly believe, and it'll sound woo woo to a lot of people, but I believe that we are put on this earth to learn lessons, to then build those lessons. And it's not to fix anything, but it's to grow and thrive and continue to be alive. And you nailed it when you said, when you feel like complacency is death, it is. And it is to
Yeah.
me too. And it's because if we're not moving around, like if you walk into nature, nature isn't just sitting around sleeping all day long. Nature's moving, because if you don't move, if the deer doesn't go over and eat the grass, it doesn't drop the tick that comes off of here, but then the bird feeds over here, but then the pollen from the bee leaves over here. Everything has to keep moving to feed the other things. And the second that we think that we're only here to serve ourselves, you're not feeding the ecosystem, and thus the ecosystem will not feed you.
Yes. It's like you lost the plot if you're only going
Yes.
to feed you. You lost the plot when you're just like getting DoorDash every day and like not going and like not leaving the house and interacting with your neighbors. Like somewhere the plot was lost, I think.
It is, and I speak passionately about it because I lived it. I spent like 10 months to almost a year living in a basement and motels and different things like that when I was going through my sober journey in the beginning, because I was afraid of the world. Because I was afraid that I wasn't strong enough to walk into a bar to buy a cheeseburger, because I was afraid I was going to put my head under the beer faucet and start drinking all day. You know what I mean? Like, and you can laugh
Yeah.
because that's where my head went. Like it
Yeah,
was that
yeah.
asinine and crazy.
It's your intrusive thoughts when you're
Yes.
at a bar. Like at the
Yeah.
time you were like, this is an intrusive thought. I just want to put my head under the and I can understand.
Yeah, and I knew like I was the kind of guy, like I worked in the beer industry. If somebody ran to me at a bar, it wasn't I was a celebrity, but people did know I was the beer guy. So what do you want to do when you walk into a bar and you see the beer guy? You want to buy him a drink. And so that was
Yeah.
how, like, I would be drinking all day long and for free while everybody buy me a beer. But at the same time, that was my other fear. I was like, well, I don't want to turn them down because I don't want it to hurt my relationship with them. And then that was a whole nother internal battle. So it took 10 months to a year to get out of the basement, literally. So when you mentioned the DoorDash thing, exactly, like that's all it was. I didn't want to go anywhere. I couldn't do takeout. I was doing takeout because it was quick and easy. But go back to your other question real quick. Uh, Today I drive. It's funny. Like today I'm 3.5 years in, and I drive with my back seat's full of spirits. Like so, I can literally be driving in my car, and I could reach back at any point and grab a canned cocktail and pop it and drink, but I don't. And
Right.
people are always like, "How is that possible?" And I said, "Because I did the work. Like I did the work years ago by setting myself up in that basement, but also I did the work by getting out of the basement." And I speak differently about sobriety than a lot of other people. Like I did AA and I did rehab, but I didn't stay long. And I didn't stay long because if I stay long in a cycle of rumination and regret and shame, it'll weigh me to a place that I don't want to be. So but it's also not the same as deleting the photos. So it's not denial. It's moving past it and then learning from that moment, because every mistake is a lesson. And one thing it took me years to learn was I stayed in a place where, why is this happening to me? That's what went through my head all the time. Why is this happening to me? And then it wasn't until I got to a place where it was like, it wasn't why is this happening to me? It was what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
When I was able to shift that thing to where every time a negative thing came up, it was what can I learn from this? The entire life changed. Like it was
Yeah.
like you unlocked and like you wiped the windshield wipers off my sunglasses or a foggy mirror kind of scenario. It was that instantaneous.
Yeah, it's actually really incredible. It's incredible the wisdom that comes to us when we're in a moment of suffering, when we feel
Oh, yeah.
like no, there's no other answers, there's no solutions to this. Like it's I actually wonder if like the reason we suffer, or like the reason our bodies suffer, or like we feel the emotion of suffering, is because it's because we're supposed to learn. Like it's literally like your final exam after you've like been through it. It's like your finals. And right after that suffering, you just have this like really cool feeling of, wow, okay, like and now I can go back out there. Now I can go back and like go back in the ring, go back and play, and you just engage differently with the world. I actually it's actually interesting, very different from you, but I had a similar moment of suffering, but like it was like maybe a heartbreak plus food poisoning, you can say.
Hmm.
And I remember I was just in bed for like 48 hours. I was so sad, and I was literally, quite literally reflecting on the concept of suffering. And 48 hours later, I came back downstairs, and my uncle was there at the time, and I went up to him and I was like, "Uncle, I'm gonna be vegan now. I think that I think that these animals are suffering, and I don't want to be part of that. Like I felt enough suffering for the last 2 days." I know it's like such a silly thing to say, but
It's not
I was
silly.
like,
It's not silly. You're good.
I felt suffering, and it makes me really sad to think that there's these beings who are out there suffering, and I want to like stop. I don't want to participate in causing them suffering. So like I've been vegan for like 8 years now,
That's what I was gonna say. You still, yeah.
calorie cycle. So
So
yeah, I think that suffering does help us grow. It helps us change, and sometimes it leaves like lasting lessons and lasting changes in your life, hopefully for the better.
Now I'm not a religious person, so to speak, but when you go and look at other religions, I do read them all. I read and I'm obsessed with religion. I just can't choose. Like that's where, that's my joke is like, so I'm very obsessed with religion. But one thing that's interesting is in a lot of these religion, suffering is a piece of it. And
Yeah.
when you and always in the religion, what we lose as humans when we read those scriptures or whatever book it is that you're choosing, that suffering is intentionally put in there because it is a growth. But we in our world in modern society, sometimes I feel like we get it as like, oh, that's the higher power, the source, the God be putting pressure and controlling the person. But I think we're misunderstanding it. I think it's an intentional suffering because, you know, let's say I'm going to go down the reincarnation path. Okay. Let's say if you believe in reincarnation, that is what the belief is that you're going back to learn the lessons you didn't do the one prior. And if you're if you're male on the ground on the earth right now and you go back and you reincarnate, if you didn't learn your lessons as a male and you might have been let's just say a piece of shit male, you might be reincarnated as a female next time to learn how to grow and learn the opposite side of things. And I think when you mix all these things together and you get scared of suffering, and I think a lot of times we try to get the easy fix because we're afraid of the process of suffering. And that easy fix, and I was one too. I literally checked out for years in my life through drinking and pills and things like that. Like I took the easy route. I didn't want to deal with the world. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I wanted to hide. I wanted to exist and be present, but mentally I didn't want to process any of that stuff. And it wasn't until I faced it all that I could understand it. And I look at these religious perspectives and I see the commonality in all of that. It is in every religion there is suffering, and in every religion it is for a lesson. It is not for a oppression, so to speak, of things,
Yeah. And I think the one thing that's actually really fascinating about suffering, I love that we're on this topic, is that it's that like no one can quite like capture it, right? Like I feel like a lot of stuff I see on social media, and like no, not to throw shade, but also like sometimes it feels like performative suffering. Like I'm
Yes.
suffering so much. I'm like going through it, but it's like I just know when you're, I don't know, I could be wrong. And there's different ways to like navigate like suffering. Like some people might be like, I'm so radically myself, I want to like pull up the camera and like record myself. And I have so much respect for that. And that's real. I know that's real. But also it's just like, I think there's like a inability to express suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes where like I'm in it and then when you explain it, it almost kind of loses the purpose. Does that make sense?
It does, because what happens is what I feel like in when I'm explaining my suffering, it feels minor. And the reason
Yes.
is because when you can put a face and a label on it, you're acknowledging it. And what happens is when you acknowledge it, you've completely taken all of the strength and power away from it. So actually, when you talk about your suffering more, not in a ruminating victimhood way, but truly in I'm accepting this position I'm in life. This is not where I want to be. But when I verbalize a lot of things. And when I verbalize those things, I do it intentionally. It could be the autism and stuff like that and the Asperger's. But at that time, it was a therapy piece to vocalize the issue, and you then completely take the power away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. So it's kind of like a solution to suffering is talking about it.
It's worked for me. Is like, and if you think about it, what is the number one thing people that stay in a suffering don't do? They don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm guilty of that. I'm
So
super guilty of that.
So I still do it. I'm not preaching from a high tower. I'm just telling you a couple times I bounced off rock bottom and it worked. So,
Yeah.
but let's talk a little bit about well, speaking of suffering, let's talk about entrepreneurship.
Best kind of suffering.
Exactly.
My favorite kind of suffering.
Did you what age were you when you got the entrepreneurial bug? There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
And then paint the picture, give me the environment, the emotions, everything when the light bulb came.
So I think I've always had the entrepreneurial bug. My parents are entrepreneurs. They're like immigrants from India, and like the only way to survive was really entrepreneurship because they don't have they're not like going to be like computer scientists, right? My mom owns a beauty salon. My dad, when I was like 12, I remember was like, I'm gonna sell printer ink. And he would take me to these like offices around the valley, and we would go door to door. Can you imagine? He was there with his 12-year-old child going door to door, and he didn't speak English really well. So I was the one running the sale, and I was like, hey, would you like to buy printer ink? We got great deals. So that's kind of like where I think my entrepreneurship journey really started. But I did the college thing, I did the job thing, I did some like, side gigs, like some consulting gigs, which I thought was my initial stint into entrepreneurship. But honestly, it wasn't until I was at BCG where I was like, okay, I think I've seen it. I've seen the startup thing, I've seen the corporate thing, and I kind of want to do my own thing. And it was really scary. It was just like, imagine just like you're always used to having like consistent income, and you're used to like having a stable job, health insurance, all of the benefits, and BCG had it nice. Like it was so good. And can you imagine, like, you have it all and then you're kind of still like, yeah, but I'm just gonna like drop that and go cold into space that, like CPG is a pretty new space for me, I would say, but tech has always been like this connector across multiple spaces for me. It's like I can get into. I remember I did a project for mining, like in the mining industry at BCG. I did a project for like L'Oreal, Clorox. I did a project with American tire distributors and so forth. So like I got a chance to touch a lot of industries, and I was like, okay, like tech is something that I can actually take with me and create something with for an industry that I believe I can solve a problem for. And my co-founder, also my best friend Karishma, she was kind of having the same itch at the same time, and we were talking about it. And at one point, we were just like, you know what? It's better to try and have an A+ life than be totally comfortable with a B- life. It's better to try and like know that you put your all in and have control over your life, have control over the output, have control over the impact that you have over the end user. And before you know it, I was submitting my resignation letter and going full send on this.
That's awesome. The I'll tell you, as somebody who's been a solopreneur for 18 years now, I can tell you that the joy you always need to keep is never let the aspirations or goal of money be any driver. And I'm not sure, I know that's not the case in how deep we've already gotten in this conversation, but there are going to be moments 5, 10, 15 years from now where it's going to distract you. Stay grounded always in what you just said to me. And what you just said is one of the driving reasons that I started the show and started interviewing founders, because the founder story was always done in a very performative way with big lights and in a studio and all this stuff. And
or like, look how much money we've raised. And actually, like, now that I'm in this world and now that I see it, I feel like there's founders who raise money, and then there's founders who build businesses.
yes.
and every now and then you'll see an overlap between the two, and those are freaking incredible founders, like really running it. And we've seen like a whole bunch of these like in the last 20 years. But I've also seen a lot of founders that raise too much, and then now they're in like zombie land, or founders that raise a lot but can't quite get to that product market fit, right? And now I think there's almost no excuse to raise without product market fit. So
You're exactly right. Yep. And that's, I'm glad you brought up the fundraising piece, because I've met a lot of founders and known a lot in my life that were very successful fundraisers. And the second that they received those funds at the big scale, we're talking, they told me that the whole thing changed. The whole mission, the whole intention, the whole mindset, the whole mental health, everything went down. And I've actually had a lot, and I will never share their names publicly, but I've had some that tell them that the successful raise was the biggest regret of their professional career.
Yeah, which is really hard, right? Because maybe they came in from a point of view of, I actually do want to create a product that helps, but then they got lost in the sauce, I think.
Yep, it happens. And I did it at different points with different projects. And I can tell you that from my experience as well, when things get to a scale where things are beyond your control, it's not fun. And we achieve, like, in this American society, it's like, you got to be the biggest, you got to be the next Elon, you got to be the next this. It's like, really, like, I don't know that that's even like, there is a lot of success in this lower tier, in this lower area, where there's only a couple commas. There's a lot of fun in that area, and there's a lot of growth, and there's a lot of sustainable ecosystem. And let's go back to the ecosystem. It's like, when you're busy doing that and running, let's say you raise $500 million or 30 million, even $30 million, or let's say you're a founder that has 2 people and you just raised $5 million. The second you receive that $5 million, you just took on a high paying job. You're no longer a founder because your boss wants his money back. And every day, that is what's in your head, is getting your boss that money back. And sometimes that weight, and let's go back to the ruminating, the stress of it, all of that, if you're not mentally and emotionally built, I was just on a podcast a couple of weeks ago where we literally talked about this, was the people that get to that level but didn't do the self work before then, that's where they turn into monsters.
Yeah, that's true. Like you heard about Builder AI, right? the downfall of Builder and how much money they raised, and now they're in like some really big trouble for like misusing funds. And I think that's also a risk of, you know, some people raising too much. In all honesty, Revya AI is raising, so like if anyone's hearing this and interested in investing in Revya, like no shade on investors at all, but but I do think there is more work that VCs and investors need to do in like who they're investing in, and like understand what their objectives are, understand what, like whether they're just understand how they're trying to build a business. And I feel like VCs have gotten like much better, like investors in general have gotten much better. It's like we've kind of passed the wave of like anyone can make it or anyone can do anything. All you need is like a little bit of VC money and then this like crazy project is going to take off. We're now in like a more everyone's doing a little bit more due diligence. And I think like the recent horror stories of like what's been going on with investor funds has made everyone a little bit more alert. So there is that piece, right? Like there's people, you know, there's like people like the ones that ran Builder, and then there's people like the ones who run Uber, or like regular businesses that we now know and love, and they wouldn't have made it without VC money. They needed the fuel for the fire. So there's good and bad to both. It's really just about like what you're doing with it, right? Like it's what you're doing with it.
And that's exactly, you nailed it. And I wasn't throwing any shade to ventures, and I know a lot of those guys and they listen and stuff like that. But it's one of those things, and they'll laugh when they hear this, because what I want to reiterate to everybody in the audience, so it's not taken out as well, is it's the individual when you're taking the money with the wrong intention and you haven't done the work with the confidence. Because then what happens is the paranoia comes in. And then when the paranoia comes in, then it reflects out to your team. And then you're on them, you know, and then you're projecting on stuff on them. So when you come into it, like you're saying, when you're grounded, and you, based on the conversation we've just had, you're grounded in this. And I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to those that what you just said is the money will fix the problem. The money won't fix the problem. The money
is not going to solve product market fit, man. Like if no one wants your product, no one wants it, even if you have a lot of money.
Exactly. The money will scale the problem, whether it's good or bad.
The money is going to scale the problem. Exactly. And actually, it's kind of bad because it's delusional, right? Like it's feeding into the delusion of like, I have a product that might have product market fit, but like it doesn't. And now you've just raised a bunch of money to like go pursue solving a problem that's not really a problem, that might be like just nice to have.
Exactly. Well, hey, we got about a couple more minutes left. And now that you mentioned about the fundraising, I do want to give an opportunity out there, because there are a lot of people that listen and watch that are in that world. What types of investors and partnerships are you looking for in that area? So anything that has resonated in this conversation, it's been an extremely vulnerable conversation. They very much have gotten to know you very well, and you as an individual in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, so we're kicking off our seed round actually, and I'm happy to go over like our numbers with anyone who's interested. So just like shoot us an email or find us on revya.ai. Like the booking meeting goes straight to my calendar links. So if anyone wants to chat or reach out, that'd be great. And we're really excited about the business we're building. I feel like there's strong traction for, you know, like how long we've been on it, and we're doing like our growth is pretty incredible for you know who we are and like how hard we've been working on it. And the one thing to say is like it's not just the product and the problem that we're solving. It's like this team is like amazing. Like I work with my co-founder, who is one of the most incredible, sharp people I've ever met. She's a data queen. Like if there's, you know how there's these like crazy documents that have like 300 line items, and if there's even a small discrepancy on it, she can just like spot it just by looking at it. And it's because she's just that good. And that's what you'd be investing in, a really solid team and a solid business with good traction and lots in the pipeline already building and brewing.
There you go. Nice. And then as far as customers go, like people that would get in your services, like any size scale, and you guys kind of adapt and necessary to any size scale, or is there any bottom caps or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say any brand that's doing over $10 million in annual revenue, and they're selling via retail, grocery channels, or through distributors, and they find they find that they're getting a lot of deductions, you should reach out. Definitely check us out on Revya.ai. Deductions is our core metric. So we measure our success by how much can we recover back for the brand. So it's all about margin optimization. And the second tier is trade spend planning, revenue forecasting, and being able to see like, okay, I'm investing so much in this trade spend. What am I actually getting back? And being able to see the true ROI against your promotions. That's like the second tier. So if you're looking to have a little bit more support on your financial back office or trade spend, check us out on Revya.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And I have to always say this, that it takes a lot of courage to come on a show where there's no prep. We didn't hop on a meeting beforehand. We've never met before. And it's one of those things that it's a true joy to be able to do this on a weekly basis and meet founders like yourself and just be completely vulnerable and just like really just shed any sort of aspect of it, because that's what's real. And that's
Right.
what this all is built on. And back to what we talked about with sustainability of our ecosystem of relationships and business. And I think that the more we get those masks off and we just are real and honest about each other every day of the hour, the better we can all be. So thank you so much for the courage. And I knew going into this, having founders on this show, they were going to be courageous, but I got to give credit because some founders decline whenever I tell them there's no prep and there's no questions. They don't want to be on. So I do have to give you guys credit.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I can't wait to see it, and can't wait to see all the ways in which you grow as well, Nate.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll close out with this, everybody. I want to remind you, as much as we talk about business and we talk about life, it is involved with being a good person. All right. So my challenge this week, starting off and every week moving forward, is 5 minutes of positivity with a stranger every week. That's all we're asking. That's 1 minute a day, Monday through Friday, and a little on Saturday and Sunday if you want. So while you're walking down the street, put your phone in your pocket, look a stranger in the eye, smile at them. When you're filling up that cup of coffee at the gas station, look to the person next to you, ask them how they're doing, and close your mouth and actually listen to what they say and make a connection with them. Because even though your life might be great and everything's fulfilled and everything like that, you don't know what's going on in everybody else's life. And statistically, a lot of people are at it hard up. So that 5 minutes a week, you could change somebody's day, change somebody's year. And this is a business show. So let's think about ROI. You spend 5 minutes making somebody's life better or communicating with them, and they spend 3 days thinking about it. That's a pretty good ROI. So thank you so much for today. And I really appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you again. I'm gonna bring you back in for a roundtable, and we're gonna talk about some other stuff in a couple months or so. So I'll let this episode kind of go through. Yeah.
I would love that. Let's run it.
Perfect. Well, you have a good rest of your day. It was so nice meeting you. I'm looking forward to this relationship moving forward.
Yeah, likewise, Nate. Thank you so much.